Spring Security. Hi guys, today we're going to learn security, Spring Security in Spring Boot 3. Okay, let's see the how the architecture it looks like. Let's check this one from this website, medium.com. Based from this architecture, let me zoom this out. Okay, on this architecture, when the client send the HTTP request, the security filter chain will intercept the request and forward it to authentication manager. Then this authentication manager will call the authentication provider, which can be one or more authentication provider. Then the authentication provider will call the password encoder and user detail service. This user detail service will retrieve basically the user details information from database, or this one actually is optional, I believe. It could be from map, or it could be from in-memory storage. Okay, so once the authentication is successful, basically the principal, which is the user, and the authorities, which is the role, will be stored in security context holder. All right. I think it will be clearer if I show you how to implement this in the Spring Boot 3. Okay. I'll show you the dependency in Spring Boot. We basically need this dependency, Spring Boot starter security. But then again, of course, since we are going to test it using controller, then we will be needing also this web starter web. Okay. All right. Basically, yeah, we only need these two dependency for this demonstration. Okay, but for the security, Spring Security, we basically need only this. Okay, so once we added the dependency, we need to configure this security filter chain. Okay, let me show you how we configure it. Yeah, this one. Security filter chain. Okay, security filter chain is basically has the HTTP security parameter, where we can configure the object, right, by specifying which endpoint we allow, basically, which is in our case, I have two endpoint here. One is test 1 and test 2. Basically, the first endpoint I will allow it for this demonstration. The second endpoint I will require authentication. Okay, so for this simple demonstration, I will configure it like that. So for test 1, since I allow it, the configuration should be like this. Okay, authorizes HTTP requests. Then the request matchers should be like this, which what we have in our controller /test1. Then permit all, because we do not require authentication. Okay. Then after that, any endpoint, in our case we steer another endpoint, which is /test2. It will be covered by this specification, should I say configuration. Any requests authenticated. this two line should this two line means any request will require authentication, and of course to authenticate we need a login page. That's why we need this form login. Okay, yeah, basically that's it. That's very simple configuration for our security filter chain. All right, then also based on this diagram, we also need user service details and password encoder. This authentication manager and authentication provider is internally will be provided by our framework, so we only need to supply this. We need to define how we instantiate this password encoder and user details service. Okay, then for our DB, since this is just a demo, I will not use DB, I will just use map. Okay, so let me show you our first this is for use for our password encoder. We can simply do like this. We can use the bcrypt password encoder implementation, okay, for this interface. Okay, so bcrypt password encoder for the implementation of our password encoder. Okay, then for user details service, this is again, this is an interface. For the implementation of this, we can use in-memory user details manager. This is provided by the Spring, but we can use this for, say, simple testing. But in our for this demo, I will not use this one. I will use a service, because in real world we normally create a service to implement this interface, user details service interface. Okay, so as you can see, we have I created a service here, user details service implementation for this interface. This interface is provided again by our Spring framework, security core user details service. Okay, so this is provided by Spring. We just need to implement. For our implementation, we need to implement basically one method only, which is this one, load user by username. So we basically need to return this object, user details object, which is provided again by this framework. We need to provide this object. Let's see, this is basically an interface. Okay, user details interface. So basically we need to return this object. So in our case, since this is just a demo, I will populate this object using data from our map. But in real world, we should populate this object using DB data. Okay, but since this is just a demo, I will just use map. All right, so for our map implementation, as you can see, I declare a map here, then I populate this. I hard coded the data. See, I have two users here, one is Aga, another one is Rock. Then I hard coded the password and the roles. Okay, so when passing the password, we need to encode it. It's a required. If we do not encode it, the framework will complain, will throw some error. So it's a requirement to use this password encoder to encode the password. That's why we have here password encoder, right, in the diagram. All right, so after we initialize the map, so we can return a user details object already in this method. So basically that's it. Then internally, the Spring Security Framework will call this implementation, basically this interface, using this implementation, and return the user details object. So here, as you can see here, we have authentication providers here, right? So authentication provider will basically call this password encoder and user details to do authentication internally. But from our end, we do not care about the authentication provider and authentication manager. We only supply the user details service and our implementation for uh, this one, password password encoder. All right, because internally, again, this framework will use these two object, password encoder and user service. Basically this password encoder and user service implementation. In our case, I didn't use the inline memory. I created a service to implement the service. So internally, authentication provider will use these two how do you say it, service, password encoder and user detail service to do authentication internally. Then once the authentication is successful, the framework basically uh, store the principal, which is again the username, and the authorities, which is the role of the user in this security context folder. All right, so let me test our simple app to verify whether it's working, our security Spring Security, whether our Spring Security is working or not. Okay, so I have a simple REST controller here with two endpoints, as I said earlier. For the first endpoint, which is test 1, I will not require authentication. That's why I put permit all. Then the rest, which is test 2 will be covered by this any request. For test 2, it will authentication is required. And for the authentication, of course, we need inputs, right? The username, password. That's why we need this form login. Okay, so let's run this. Let me check this. Okay, let's see. Let's first we test this test 1 and see whether there is authentication or not. All right, as you can see, hello test 1. Okay, so there's no authentication, right? Then for test 2, we require authentication, so we expect login page here. Test 2, right? See, there's a login page. This login page is provided by Spring Framework, but of course in the real world we replace this, right? But since this is just a demo, I did not provide a login page, because this simple page is enough to show you the concept of Spring Security. Okay, so in our implementation, we have two users here. Let's try the first user, which is Aga. Let's input the password is pwd1. So let's try wrong password and see what's the output. All right, so it's working, right? Internally, the framework is validating it. So let me double confirm whether it's working or not. We input the correct password, pwd1. So by right, since the password is correct, it should go through, and let's go to this. Yeah, it should execute this logic, right? So once I click the sign in button, it should display this login username, whatever the name of the username, and the role, which is role admin, because here we put admin. So it's the role will be provided by the framework. It will append the actual role, which is the admin. Okay, let's see the output. All right, so let me check. So log in username, then the username, which is aga, the role is admin. This string role underscore is provided by the framework. The actual role is this admin. All right, let's try the other one. I think if we since we are already logged in, I think if we hit again the endpoint, it will not redirect to login page because we are already authenticated. Okay, let's verify. All right, so let's try other browser. I have another browser here. Since this one is different, how you say it, this is another client, different client. The first one is Safari, this one is Chrome, so it's different client. So by right, I hit the endpoint again, test2. By right, we will get the it will be redirected to login page. Okay, so this time let's try the other user, which is Rock. Let's put the wrong password. All right, let's enter the correct password, pwd2. all right, so Rock role is admin because we specify his admin. So that's it, guys. I hope you learned something important today. Hope you find it useful. I'll see you again next time. Bye bye.